If this is your idea of sabotage, I'm honestly impressed.
Aisha Brown had a limit, and 8 horrible dates arranged by her mom was the limit. Dentist who only talked about cavities. Check. Accountant who brought a spreadsheet of the ideal wedding budget. Check. Friend's cousin who lived with his mom and collected Pokemon cards. Check. So when mom called saying, "I have the perfect date for you, with a gorgeous guy on Saturday," Aisha decided, total sabotage. That way, mom would definitely stop setting up bad dates for her. She'd wear old sweats, no makeup, and messy hair. Look so ugly the guy would run away instantly. The perfect plan. Until she arrived at dinner and saw Jordan Rue, millionaire, hot, perfect, exactly the type she dreamed of. Right on the day she decided to look like a troll. This story will make you die laughing, believe me. Hi, my name is Kay, the creator of this channel, and today I want to thank the comments from Josephine and Mark. Thank you so much for commenting. Your support makes all the difference. And if you want your comment to appear in the next video, answer me real quick. Do you believe that a date arranged by the woman's own mother can work out and turn into true love? Let me know in the comments. Chapter 1. Sabotage, Plan, and Shock.
If he runs away tonight, my mom will finally stop.
The phone rang for the 3rd time in less than 5 minutes, and I already knew exactly who it was before even looking at the screen. Mary Brown, my mother, had an irritating ability to call at the most inopportune moment, especially when I had my hands covered in chemical solvent, and my attention completely focused on an 18th century French painting that needed urgent restoration. I took a deep breath, wiped my hands on my stained apron, and answered with all the patience I could muster in that moment of professional tension. "Mom, I'm working," was all I managed to say before she interrupted me with that overly excited tone that always preceded some news I definitely didn't want to hear. "Aisha, honey, I have incredible news for you." Her voice practically vibrated through the phone, and I closed my eyes, mentally preparing myself for what would come next. Can this wait? I'm restoring an important piece, and I can't just drop everything in the middle of the process. I tried to argue, but I already knew it would be completely useless when it came to my mother and her self-declared missions to marry off her only daughter. Work can always wait, Aisha, but life can't. And I finally found him, the perfect man for you. The declaration came with so much conviction that for a moment I almost believed that this time would be different from the other 8 failed attempts to push me into the arms of completely unsuitable men. But then the memory of the accountant who brought a detailed spreadsheet of the ideal budget for a wedding on the first date came back to my mind, and I sighed heavily, propping the phone between my shoulder and ear while going back to cleaning my hands. "Mom, we've been through this 8 times in the last 6 months, and none of them were even remotely close to perfect," I responded, with all the calm I could maintain in the face of the absurd situation that constantly repeated itself in my life. The dentist who only talked about cavities during the entire dinner, the accountant obsessed with spreadsheets, her friend's cousin who lived with his mom at 35 and had a collection of 400 action figures that he made a point of showing me photo by photo for a full hour. They all paraded through my memory like a poorly produced romantic horror film. But this one is different, honey. I feel it in my mother's heart. His name is Jordan. He's successful, handsome, and single. Exactly the type of man you need. Her insistence was relentless, and I could practically see the determined expression on her face even through the phone line. You said exactly the same thing about the accountant, Mom, and he literally brought an Excel spreadsheet to our first date," I reminded her with a touch of sarcasm that she completely ignored, as she always did when she was determined to move forward with her wild plans. "Jordan is completely different. He's a friend of my cousin's husband, and she guaranteed me that he's absolutely incredible, polite, charming, and perfect for you." With each adjective my mother added to the description of this Jordan guy, I felt my willingness to participate in this farce decrease exponentially. "Oh, Mom, I really don't want a blind date. I'm perfectly happy being single with my work, my friends, and my cat. That's more than enough for me." I tried to argue for the 1000th time, knowing full well that I would be completely ignored like in all previous attempts. "You can't die alone surrounded by cats, Aisha. I simply won't allow my only daughter to turn into that eccentric lady who lives isolated with 10 felines." The drama in her voice would have been worthy of a soap opera actress, and I rolled my eyes, even knowing she couldn't see me through the phone. "I have one cat, Mom, a single cat named Mr. Whiskers. That's singular and not plural," I corrected with all the patience I still had left after years dealing with these repetitive conversations. "For now, it's just one, but this kind of thing is a slippery slope, and soon you'll have 10 of them living in your apartment." She made a dramatic pause that I knew very well preceded the final bomb. "The date is set for Saturday at 7 p.m. at Café Lucien, and I already confirmed your attendance with him." The silence that followed was interrupted only by the sound of my incredulous breathing and my furious racing heartbeat. "You confirmed my attendance without even asking me first." The indignation in my voice was palpable, but my mother remained completely unmoved in the face of my justified outrage. "Yes, because I knew exactly that you would refuse like you always do, and then this wonderful opportunity would be wasted. Now you have to go. It would be extremely rude to cancel after I already confirmed everything." Her twisted logic was both impressive and completely irritating. I practically shouted into the phone, defeated by the emotional manipulation that my mother had perfected over the years. "But I'm not promising absolutely anything besides showing up there," I added firmly, before she could start creating unrealistic expectations about the outcome of this date doomed to failure. "Just be yourself, honey, pretty, nice and charming like always, and I'm sure he'll fall in love instantly." Her excitement was so genuine that it almost made me feel guilty about the plan that was already forming in my head. I hung up the phone and looked at Mr. Whiskers, who was comfortably lying in my favorite armchair, observing the whole scene with his indifferent green eyes. She wants me to be myself and pretty, but what if I'm myself in a way that's completely opposite to pretty? I spoke out loud to my cat, who meowed back as if judging my sanity. The idea started small but quickly grew in my mind, until it transformed into a complete and brilliant plan of total sabotage. If my mother wanted me to go to this ridiculous date with yet another probably horrible man she had chosen without any criteria other than his availability, then I would go, yes, but in a way that would guarantee this would be the last arranged date she would try to impose on me. I would look so absolutely terrible, so completely sloppy and uninteresting, that this Jordan guy would run away before even dessert, and then my mother would finally understand that her amateur matchmaker efforts were completely useless and would give up for good. Saturday arrived faster than I expected, and at 6 p.m. I was already in front of my closet executing the final phase of my meticulously elaborated plan of complete self-sabotage. "Okay, Mr. Whiskers, let's review the strategy." I spoke to my cat, who was watching me with that feline judgment expression he had perfected over the years. "The goal is to look so absolutely horrible that this Jordan panics and runs, and then Mom will finally stop arranging these disastrous dates." I grabbed my oldest and most stained sweatshirt, the one I only wore to clean the apartment or do particularly dirty restoration work. The fabric was faded and had several paint stains that never came out completely despite numerous washings. "Perfect. This already sets the right tone of completely gave up on life," I muttered to myself while putting the piece over an equally dull old t-shirt. I decided to completely skip makeup, not even lip gloss or mascara, and tied my hair in a messy bun without even running a brush through it first. The final touch was putting on my old crooked glasses, the ones I only wore inside the house when I was too tired to put in contact lenses. The frame was slightly bent from so much use and gave my overall appearance an air of complete sloppiness. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and almost laughed at the image staring back at me. I looked exactly like someone who had completely given up on any personal effort and was just fulfilling a social obligation against their will. Devastatingly horrible," I declared with satisfaction, while Mr. Whiskers meowed in what I chose to interpret as approval of my plan. If this Jordan was really another one of the terrible men my mother usually chose, he would have the perfect excuse to never want to see me again. And if by some miracle he was minimally decent, my carefully careless appearance would guarantee he'd completely lose interest before even the appetizer. It was a perfect win-win strategy that would guarantee my freedom from arranged dates from then on. Jordan Rue arrived 5 minutes before the scheduled time, impeccable in his casual suit that cost more than most people made in a month. Luck Montgomery, his best friend since college, accompanied him with an amused smile on his face. "Dude, why the hell did you agree to come to a blind date arranged by your mom?" Luck questioned while watching Jordan choose the table near the window. "Because she threatened to show up at my office with pre-selected candidates if I refused, and I'd rather face one gold digger for a night than endure the parade of suitors my mother would organize," Jordan responded with that sarcastic tone that Luck knew so well. "Plus, it'll be fun. She'll probably ask about my job in the first 10 minutes trying to figure out how much I make, so I'll pretend I'm a teacher or something and see how long it takes until she loses interest." Luck laughed too loud, attracting curious looks from nearby tables. "You're cruel, but I absolutely love this idea. I'll sit over there at that table in the corner and watch the show." He pointed to a discreet table with a perfect view of where Jordan was sitting. "Me, if it's an absolute disaster, I'll call you pretending there's an emergency at work, and you have the perfect excuse to escape." Jordan nodded in agreement as Luck headed to his observation position, preparing for what would certainly be a memorable night. I arrived at Café Lucien at 7:02, intentionally late just enough to seem careless, but not enough to be considered extremely rude. I looked around the elegant restaurant feeling completely out of place with my stained sweatshirt in the middle of all those well-dressed people, looking for someone who seemed to be waiting for a blind date arranged by intrusive mothers. That's when my eyes found him. He was standing next to a table near the window, and my heart literally stopped beating for a full second when I registered the complete vision of the man before me. Perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than my entire month's salary. Dark hair, perfectly styled with that worked natural look that only very wealthy men can afford. Sculpted jaw that seemed to have been chiseled by some Renaissance artist, and green eyes so intense I could feel the weight of his gaze even from a distance. No, please, for the love of God, tell me this absurdly hot man isn't him. Tell me Jordan is that guy in the brown sweater at the other table. I whispered to myself in growing desperation, but the universe was clearly not on my side that day. The perfect man started walking toward me with a smile that had probably already melted hundreds of female hearts. And each step he took toward me increased my certainty that I had made the biggest mistake of my life by executing this ridiculous sabotage plan. Aisha Brown? His voice was deep and smooth at the same time, the kind of voice that made your stomach knot just from the low, confident timbre. I swallowed hard, feeling my face heat up as I registered the glaring difference between his appearance, impeccable and elegant, and mine, which looked like a person who had literally given up on living. Yes, I managed to stutter pathetically, my voice coming out higher than normal due to the nervousness that took over me. Jordan Rue, it's a pleasure to meet you. He extended his right hand toward me, and I noticed that even his hands were perfect, with long, elegant fingers that had probably never done a day of manual labor in their life. I shook his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against mine, and trying to ignore the electric current that seemed to run through my entire arm with that simple contact. "Hi," was all I could say, my usual eloquence completely abandoned in the face of the most handsome man I had ever seen in my life. His green eyes scanned my appearance from my messy hair to my old shoes, but instead of the judgment or horror I expected to see, I found only a gleam of genuine amusement that left me even more disconcerted. "I see you had some kind of emergency at work." The question came with a slightly sarcastic smile that made me instantly realize he knew exactly what I had tried to do. Yes, a terrible emergency at the museum. A painting almost exploded with paint, and I didn't have time to change. I lied shamelessly, pointing to the stains on my sweatshirt. "Do paintings explode with paint frequently in your work?" His tone was clearly amused, and I felt my face flush even deeper. "Surprisingly, yes. It's an occupational hazard of art restoration." I continued lying while he pulled out the chair for me with the gentlemanliness of an old-school gentleman. I sat down, trying to ignore the expensive masculine cologne emanating from him, something woody and sophisticated that probably cost more than my electric bill. "And so, did your mother also force you to come to this date?" The direct and honest question caught me completely off guard, and I blinked several times before processing that he was being sincere. "Yes, she threatened me, saying I was going to become the eccentric lady with 10 cats if I kept refusing the dates she arranges," I admitted with a sigh of defeat. "And you?" I asked back, curious about how a man who clearly could have any woman he wanted ended up on a blind date arranged by intrusive family members. "My mother threatened to show up at my office with candidates personally selected by her if I didn't agree to come today, so here I am choosing the lesser of two evils." His answer made me laugh genuinely for the first time since I arrived at the restaurant. "Our mothers are absolutely identical in the way they manipulate our personal lives," I commented, feeling part of the tension leave my shoulders, as I realized that at least we shared the experience of having overly involved mothers. "How many cats do you currently have?" he asked with genuine interest that surprised me again. "Just one, an orange cat named Mr. Whiskers. But according to my mother, I'm on a slippery slope toward 10, I explained with a smile that he returned in a way that made my stomach do a strange flip. "Mr. Whiskers is an excellent name for a cat. It shows creativity and a sense of humor," he commented, and I couldn't help but smile even more widely at the unexpected compliment. There was a comfortable pause before Jordan leaned slightly forward, his green eyes studying me with an intensity that made my breath catch for a second. "Can I ask a potentially embarrassing question?" he questioned with that same slightly sarcastic smile from before. I nodded my head, my curiosity overcoming my apprehension about what would come next. "Did you come dressed like this on purpose to scare me away and completely sabotage this date?" The silence that followed the question was broken only by the sound of my heart beating furiously against my ribcage as I processed the fact that he had figured out my plan in less than 10 minutes of conversation. "Someone got caught red-handed, huh? How is she going to get out of this mess?" Chapter 2. Hilarious Self-Sabotage.
Let's see how long he survives this disaster.
The awkward silence that settled between us after his devastatingly accurate question about my intentional sabotage lasted only a few seconds, but it seemed to stretch for an entire eternity while I desperately tried to formulate some response that wouldn't make me look completely ridiculous. The problem was that anything I said at that moment would be inevitably ridiculous. Considering I was sitting in an elegant restaurant wearing a paint-stained sweatshirt and crooked glasses, while the most handsome man I'd ever seen in my life watched me with those green eyes full of contained amusement. I don't know what you're talking about. This is genuinely my normal everyday appearance. I tried to lie in a completely unconvincing way, but the expression on his face made it crystal clear he didn't believe a single word. Aisha, you have toothpaste on your left cheek. Your glasses are so crooked it's physically impossible that you didn't notice. And this sweatshirt says Marathon 2019, but it's so worn out it looks like you ran 40 consecutive marathons wearing the same piece. He pointed out each detail with surgical precision that made me want to sink into my chair and completely disappear. Instinctively, I brought my hand to my cheek and felt the sticky texture of toothpaste that I hadn't even noticed was there, probably a remnant of the rushed brushing I did before leaving the house. Well, you see, I was in a hurry and I started to stutter another pathetic excuse when he gently raised his hand, interrupting me with a smile that was simultaneously amused and surprisingly kind. I just admit you came purposely sloppy to scare me away. It'll be much easier for both of us if we start this conversation with basic honesty, he suggested, with that confident tone of someone who was completely in control of the situation. I sighed defeated because there really was no point in continuing to lie to someone who had clearly already completely deciphered my ridiculous strategy. Okay, yes. I came purposely looking as bad as possible because I thought you'd be another one of the horrible dates my mother arranges, and I wanted to guarantee this would be the last one, I finally admitted, feeling my face heat up with the embarrassment of the confession. And now that I see you're not even a little bit horrible, actually you're quite the opposite of horrible, I kind of want to die of embarrassment because this is literally the first time my mother got it right, and I completely messed it up. The laugh that escaped him was genuine and warm. Not the kind of mocking laughter I feared, but something that sounded almost like he was enchanted with the entire absurd situation. This is honestly the most refreshing thing that's ever happened on any date I've ever had in my life, he declared, leaning comfortably back in his chair, as if preparing to thoroughly enjoy the rest of the night. Most women I meet in situations like this come with perfect makeup, expensive dresses, and an obvious interest in finding out exactly how much money I have in the bank. But you showed up looking like you completely gave up on life just to scare me away. That's so authentic, it's almost poetic. Before I could respond to his strangely flattering observation, the waiter appeared beside our table with a professional smile and a small notepad to take our orders. Good evening. Are you ready to order? He asked with that trained politeness of those who work in fancy establishments. I quickly looked at the menu without really processing the options, because my mind was already busy formulating the next phase of my sabotage plan, even knowing it would probably be as ineffective as the first attempt had been. I'll have the tuna sandwich, I began saying with a conviction that surprised even myself. But with extra onions, lots of onions, and also garlic. Plenty of garlic, please, I added with emphasis while watching the waiter write down the bizarre order without even blinking. The logic behind this strategic food choice was simple and brilliant at the same time. If I couldn't scare him away with my external appearance, then I certainly would with absolutely terrible breath caused by the lethal combination of tuna, onions, and garlic in industrial quantities. Jordan watched the whole scene with that same slightly sarcastic smile that was starting to become familiar, and for a brief moment, I thought my genius plan would actually work this time. You know what? That sounds delicious. I'll have exactly the same thing, he said casually to the waiter who continued writing without showing any reaction. 2 tuna sandwiches, both with extra onions and plenty of garlic. Okay, the waiter confirmed with a nod, and walked away, leaving me completely dumbfounded, staring at Jordan with a mixture of shock and growing frustration. You just ordered exactly the same thing as me, I exclaimed, unable to hide the incredulity in my voice. But it's obvious I ordered that precisely because tuna with onions and garlic will make my breath absolutely horrible. The confession escaped before I could think better about admitting out loud another sabotage attempt. He leaned slightly forward with that devastating smile that was starting to do strange things to my stomach, his green eyes shining with pure amusement. Exactly why I ordered the same thing, Aisha. This way we'll both have equally terrible breath, and nobody will have an advantage or disadvantage in this situation, he explained with logic so simple and efficient. I almost wanted to bang the table in frustration. Besides, it shows I'm a gentleman willing to share even the most unpleasant consequences of a questionable food choice. Don't you think that's romantic in a strange way? The question came with a wink that definitely shouldn't have been as attractive as it was. I wanted to argue, wanted to say there was absolutely nothing romantic about sharing garlic breath, but the words died in my throat when I realized he was right about one thing. There was something strangely charming about the way he was playing along with my ridiculous sabotage attempts instead of simply getting offended and leaving. "You're completely impossible," was all I could mutter while feeling an involuntary smile starting to form on my lips, despite all my efforts to maintain an expression of disapproval. "And you're desperately trying to hate me when it's obvious you're starting to like me," he countered with that irritating confidence that should have been repulsive, but somehow only managed to be attractive. "Just admit, this night isn't being the disaster you planned, and that maybe, just maybe, you're actually having fun talking to me." The gentle provocation made my face heat up again, and I looked away, trying to hide the obvious reaction he had definitely already noticed. "You're way too presumptuous for your own good," I grumbled, without much conviction, while nervously playing with the napkin in front of me. I prefer the term self-confident. Presumptuous has a much more negative connotation than really applies to the situation," he corrected with evident humor in his voice. "So, while we wait for our garlic-filled sandwiches, why don't you tell me more about this art restoration job that supposedly makes paintings explode?" The change of subject was clearly intentional, and I silently thanked him for not continuing to press about my confused feelings. "Well, I work at the National Museum of Fine Arts as a senior restorer, which basically means I spend my days fixing damage to old paintings and trying to preserve them for future generations," I explained, feeling immediately more comfortable talking about something I genuinely loved. Most people think it's boring work full of rigid rules, but it's actually like being a historical detective who solves mysteries using chemistry, art history, and lots of patience. His eyes shone with genuine interest that didn't seem forced or polite at all. That sounds absolutely fascinating. What was the most interesting piece you've ever restored?" The question was specific enough to show he was really paying attention, and not just making polite conversation while waiting for dinner to arrive. I felt something in my chest warm at the sincere attention he was giving me. So different from other dates where the men could barely pretend interest in anything I said. "Recently, I finished restoring a French portrait from 1820. It was the portrait of a very wealthy and pompous nobleman." I began recounting with growing animation I couldn't control. The painting was in terrible condition. It had suffered water damage and mold, but when I carefully managed to remove all the layers of dirt and old varnish, I discovered something absolutely incredible written on the back of the canvas. I made a dramatic pause, seeing that I had completely captured his attention, his green eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that made my breath catch. The original artist, a woman named Marie Leclerc, who was practically unknown at the time, had written a message in archaic French that said, "This detestable man has owed me 300 francs for 2 years and refuses to pay." I revealed, smiling at the memory of the discovery. Basically, she used the painting as an eternal form of collecting his debt, immortalizing her complaint on the back of the pompous portrait he probably proudly displayed in his mansion without ever knowing what was written behind it. The story drew a genuine loud laugh from Jordan that made several people at nearby tables look in our direction. "That's absolutely brilliant. 19th century artists were true, passive-aggressive savages," he exclaimed, still laughing, while wiping his eyes that had teared up from laughing so much. "Marie Leclerc is officially my new historical hero. What a perfect way to get revenge on a delinquent client." His genuine excitement about the story made me smile more widely than I had smiled in months, and for a moment, I completely forgot I was supposed to be trying to make him hate me. This kind of discovery is exactly what makes my work so addictive. I never know what I'm going to find hidden under layers of paint or varnish. I continued, too excited to contain myself. "Last week, I found the secret signature of an apprentice on a 17th century painting that everyone thought was by a famous master. It completely changed the historical attribution of the piece." I was gesturing as I spoke, my hands moving in the air to illustrate points he probably didn't even need visual demonstration to understand. Jordan leaned even further forward, resting his elbow on the table and his chin on his hand, while watching me talk with an expression I can only describe as enchanted. "Your eyes literally sparkle when you talk about art. Do you realize that?" The observation came so softly, I almost didn't hear it over the noise of the restaurant around us. It's like there's an internal light that turns on when you're passionate about something. It's honestly one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. The unexpected and surprisingly intimate compliment left me completely speechless. I stopped in the middle of a sentence about historical pigments, and stared at him, not knowing how to respond to the comment that had been delivered with such sincerity it didn't seem like a rehearsed line. Thank you, I managed to stutter, feeling my face heat up for the third or fourth time that night. Wait, you noticed my eyes even with these horrible crooked glasses I'm wearing? I asked, trying to deflect from the intensity of the moment with self-deprecating humor. I noticed everything about you, Aisha. From the moment you walked into this restaurant looking like you were going to a house-cleaning marathon instead of a date, he responded with that devastating smile again. Made the crooked glasses, the toothpaste stain you already cleaned but still seem mortified about, the sweatshirt that definitely has an interesting story behind each stain, and especially those brown eyes that try to hide how passionate you are about life even when you're pretending to be bored with everything. The sandwiches arrived at that exact moment, saving me from having to formulate a coherent response to his disturbingly accurate observation about my personality. The waiter placed the plates in front of us, and the strong smell of tuna mixed with onions and garlic immediately permeated the air around us. "Enjoy your meal," he said politely, before quickly walking away, probably to escape the pungent aroma we ourselves had ordered. I looked at the sandwich in front of me, and then at Jordan, who was already picking up his with an expression of pure amusement. "One last chance to give up and order something that won't completely ruin your breath for the next week," I offered, half hoping he would accept the out I was giving him. "No way. We're in this together now," he declared, before taking a huge and exaggeratedly loud bite that made me laugh involuntarily. I then decided that if I couldn't beat him with bad breath, maybe I could scare him away with terrible table manners. So I deliberately took a bite of the sandwich and started talking with my mouth still full of food. "This is really good," I said purposely rudely with pieces of tuna and bread visible between my teeth. I waited for the expression of disgust or disapproval that would certainly come, but instead, Jordan simply copied my behavior exactly. Amazing, really," he responded also with his mouth full, chewing exaggeratedly loudly, and making a point of being as rude as I was being. The sight of him, this impeccably dressed and obviously sophisticated man, behaving like a badly behaved child just to imitate me, was so absurdly hilarious that I couldn't hold back the laugh that exploded from me without warning. "You're completely ridiculous," I exclaimed between laughs while trying to cover my mouth to avoid spitting food. "And you're trying to scare me away by being purposely rude, but all you're managing to do is make me laugh," he countered, after swallowing his food and wiping his mouth with the napkin. "And just admit it once and for all, Aisha, in stained sweatshirt and crooked glasses, you're having fun on this date that was supposed to be a total disaster." The accusation came with a challenging look that made me want to vehemently deny it just out of stubbornness. "I might be having fun just a tiny bit," I admitted reluctantly, showing the smallest possible space between my thumb and index finger. "But that doesn't change the fact that you're way too presumptuous, and that I still intend to make you regret having accepted this date." The empty threat didn't fool either of us, but he nodded in agreement with fake seriousness. "Try as much as you want. I'll be here playing along with every ridiculous attempt until you finally give up and accept that we're having a genuine connection despite all your efforts to avoid it," he promised with that irritating confidence again. "Now eat your sabotage sandwich before it gets cold, and tell me more about this vengeful Marie Leclerc, who's my new favorite person in history." Chapter 3. Discovering More and Luck.
Why does it feel like the beginning of something dangerous?
Observing. Dinner ended faster than I expected, or maybe wanted to admit, and when the waiter brought the check, I instinctively reached for my purse, prepared to insist on paying my half, like I always did in any social situation. Jordan simply placed his credit card on the check before I could even open my wallet, making the gesture so naturally, it seemed like something completely automatic for him. "I'll pay. You can pay on the next date," he said casually, as if it was already completely assumed there would be a next date between us. "Who said there's going to be a next date?" I countered, trying to sound convincing despite the fact that my heart had given a little jump of excitement at his suggestion. "I just said, you're going to pay next time, so obviously there needs to be a next time for you to fulfill this financial obligation." He responded with that irritatingly efficient logic that seemed to be a permanent characteristic of his personality. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't completely hide the smile that insisted on appearing on my lips. The waiter came back with the receipt, and Jordan signed quickly before standing up and extending his hand to me in a gentlemanly gesture that should have seemed outdated but somehow only managed to be charming. "Let me take you home. It's late, and it's not safe for you to walk around the city alone," he offered, with a seriousness that completely contrasted with the playful tone he had maintained throughout dinner. I hesitated for a moment because accepting a ride would mean prolonging the night and admitting I didn't want it to end yet. "You really don't need to do this. I'm perfectly capable of calling a rideshare," I argued half-heartedly while grabbing my purse and getting up from the chair. I know you're capable, Aisha, but I want to walk you out because I genuinely enjoyed your company and I'm not ready for this night to end yet, he admitted with such direct honesty that it left me momentarily speechless. How did someone respond to such a sincere statement without seeming completely disinterested or overly excited? Okay, you can walk me out until I get my ride, I finally conceded, finding a middle ground that didn't completely commit me, but also didn't reject him rudely. He smiled as if he had just won some kind of important prize and gently placed his hand on my back while guiding me toward the restaurant exit. The touch was light and respectful, but even so, it sent a wave of heat up my spine that I desperately tried to ignore. As soon as we left Café Lucien onto the street lit by old lampposts that gave a romantic air to the historic neighborhood, Jordan immediately took off his suit jacket and placed it over my shoulders before I could protest. It's cold, and you're only wearing a thin sweatshirt, he explained simply, when I opened my mouth to refuse. The jacket was still warm from his body and carried that expensive woody cologne that had distracted me throughout dinner, wrapping me in a cloud of comfort that was dangerously pleasant. Technically, my sweatshirt isn't thin. It has several layers of paint stains that add extra thermal insulation, I joked, trying to ease the tension that had settled between us now that we were walking side by side along the moonlit sidewalk. He laughed in that genuine way that was already starting to become my favorite sound, a laugh that came from the chest and made his green eyes shine even under the dim street lighting. That's definitely the most creative scientific explanation for wearing stained clothes I've ever heard in my life. We walked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, our steps synchronized in a way that seemed too natural to be coincidence. So, does your mother really arrange dates that frequently? He asked, breaking the silence with genuine curiosity in his voice. 8 horrible dates in the last 6 months, all strategically planned by her, as if they were military wedding operation missions. I responded with a dramatic sigh, remembering each individual disaster. 8. Seriously, you have to tell me about all of them, because the little you mentioned before already seemed like comedy material. He insisted with evident excitement that made me laugh. Where do I start? There was the dentist who spent the entire dinner explaining in graphic detail the different stages of dental decay and showed me pictures of cavities on his phone while we ate dessert. I began recounting while Jordan made a disgusted face. Mom, he literally had a folder of photos on his phone, just of rotten teeth, and thought that was appropriate conversation for a first date. Jordan stopped walking for a second just to laugh more freely before resuming pace beside me. That's simultaneously horrible and hilarious. Please tell me there's more, he asked, wiping his eyes that had teared up from laughing so much. Oh, there's much more. There was the accountant who brought a printed and color-coded Excel spreadsheet with the detailed budget of his ideal wedding, including expense projections for future children and joint retirement plans. I continued seeing the expression of shock and amusement on his face. He did that on the first date, before you even had a real conversation? Jordan asked incredulously, shaking his head. On the first date, before the appetizer arrived, he literally opened a folder and started showing pie charts about ideal budget distribution for a young couple. I confirmed, laughing at the memory of the absurd situation. I faked a medical emergency after 20 minutes and escaped through the restaurant bathroom. You're my hero. Escaping through the bathroom is a classic and always efficient technique, he praised with genuine approval. And the other disasters? You mentioned a cousin who lives with his mom. The memory of that particular date made me groan with embarrassment. My mom's friend's cousin, 35 years old, lives in his mom's basement and has a collection of 400 action figures that he considers his greatest pride in life. I reported with renewed horror. 400. That's impressively dedicated in a very concerning way, Jordan commented, trying to maintain seriousness, but failing completely. He spent a full hour showing me photos of each figure individually, explaining the rarity and market value of each one while I mentally planned my escape. I continued, gesturing dramatically. When he started explaining his organization strategy by franchise and release year, I knew I had to get out of there or die of boredom. Jordan was laughing so hard he had to stop walking again to recover, leaning slightly on a lamppost while trying to control his breathing. Aisha, your love life is literally a comedy sitcom. How did you survive all of this with your sanity intact? He asked when he could finally speak again. Lots of therapy, wine, and long conversations with my cat, who's the only living being that doesn't judge me for my life choices. I responded with fake seriousness that made him laugh even more. And after all these disasters, your mother still keeps insisting on arranging dates, he questioned when we resumed walking. She's incredibly persistent and genuinely believes her mission in life is to see me married before 30. So yes, she keeps trying despite all the previous failures, I explained, sighing. And your mother? Is she also obsessed with marrying you off? I asked, curious about his family dynamic. My mother decided that because I reached 32 without getting married, it obviously means I need her help finding a suitable wife, he explained with a touch of affectionate exasperation in his voice. She showed up at my office last week with her best friend's daughter without warning, just walked into the conference room during an important presentation, and announced she had brought someone special for me to meet. My eyes widened with shock and amusement imagining the scene. She interrupted a work meeting? What did you do? I asked, completely invested in the story now. Did the only reasonable thing an adult man could do in that situation, faked an urgent emergency that required my immediate attention, and literally escaped through the building's emergency exit, he admitted with an embarrassed smile that was absolutely charming. You ran away from your own mother down the fire escape, I repeated incredulously, starting to laugh uncontrollably. Me down the fire escape, going down 12 floors because I couldn't risk taking the elevator and being intercepted, he confirmed, laughing with me. When my secretary called later saying my mother had waited for 40 minutes before finally leaving, and the poor girl she brought looked mortified by the whole situation. Our mothers should form an overly involved mothers club and exchange manipulation strategies, I suggested, still laughing at the mental image of him going down 12 flights of stairs just to avoid an arranged date. And they probably already have secret meetings where they plan how to make our lives more complicated, he agreed. That's why when she insisted so much on today's date, I ended up accepting. I figured it would be easier than having her show up at my work every week with different candidates. We walked a few more blocks in comfortable silence before Jordan suddenly stopped walking and turned completely to face me. The lamppost light beside us illuminated half his face, creating shadows that made his green eyes even more intense and penetrating. Aisha, can I be completely honest with you about something? He asked with a sudden seriousness that made my heart race nervously. Of course. Honesty is always welcome, I responded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the growing nervousness. I agreed to come today expecting it would just be another terrible date I'd have to endure for a few hours before I could politely escape. He began maintaining intense eye contact. I expected to meet someone only interested in my money or status, someone who had come all dolled up trying to impress me for all the wrong reasons. I swallowed hard, not knowing exactly where he was going with this. But then you showed up in a stained sweatshirt and crooked glasses, openly admitted you had come ugly on purpose to scare me away, ordered a sandwich that would guarantee horrible breath and was genuinely yourself without trying to impress or pretend to be someone you're not. He continued, approaching slightly. And that was so refreshing, so real and authentic, that I couldn't stop wanting to know more about you. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it, even with the distance still maintained between us. Jordan, I don't know what to say, I admitted honestly, feeling my face heat up again. You don't need to say anything now. You just need to agree to go out with me again. A real second date where you can come dressed normally if you want, or in a stained sweatshirt again if you prefer, because honestly, I don't care, he asked with a hopeful smile. I don't know if it's a good idea. Dates generally don't work well for me, as you can see from the 8 previous disasters, I argued weakly, knowing I was already losing the battle against my own desire to say yes. Mom, those didn't work because the guys were idiots, or you were sabotaging on purpose. But with me, you can try for real without self-sabotage and see what happens, he counter-argued with irritatingly solid logic. You're very confident about this working, I observed, crossing my arms defensively. And you're very scared of the possibility of actually liking someone, he countered gently but with accuracy that made me look away. And I'm not scared. I'm being realistic about my past experiences, I insisted stubbornly, despite knowing he was right about my fear. Then give me a chance to change your experiences. A real date on Friday where I pick you up at 7 and we take this seriously, he proposed, extending his hand as if we were closing a business deal. I looked at his extended hand, and then at his green eyes full of genuine hope, and something inside me completely gave in. And okay, a date on Friday, but if you mention spreadsheets or action figure collections, I'm leaving immediately. I finally accepted, shaking his hand. The smile that lit up his face was so genuinely happy, it made something strange happen in my chest. I promise there will be no spreadsheets, action figures, or discussions about dental decay, he guaranteed, still holding my hand longer than necessary. Hey, now let me call a car for you, before you realize you agreed to go out with me again and change your mind. He lifted my hand and gently kissed the back of it, in a gesture so unexpectedly gentlemanly that it left me completely without reaction. Until Friday, Aisha in stained sweatshirt who completely stole my night, he said softly before releasing my hand and taking a step back. Until Friday, Jordan who's irritatingly charming and knows it, I responded, trying to maintain some composure despite the fact that my heart was doing acrobatics in my chest. The car arrived a few minutes later, and I got in still in shock about everything that had happened that surreal night. Jordan closed the door for me and waved as the car drove away, and I spent the entire trip home touching the place where he had kissed my hand as if I could still feel the warmth of his lips there. As soon as the car turned the corner and disappeared from sight, Jordan pulled his phone from his pocket and wasn't surprised to see 5 unread messages from Luck, who had obviously watched the entire date from his table in the corner of the restaurant. Before he could respond to any of them, the phone started ringing with Luck's name flashing on the screen. "Hi, Luck," he answered with a smile he knew his friend could hear through his voice. "Dude, you're smiling. I can hear the smile in your voice and you never smile like that after dates," Luck practically shouted from the other end of the line with obvious excitement. "Shut up," Jordan responded without any conviction because he knew it was completely true. "She's special, isn't she? The girl in the stained sweatshirt who showed up looking like she'd given up on life is special." Luck insisted with that "I know you better than anyone" tone. "Maybe she's a little special," Jordan admitted reluctantly, while starting to walk back to where he had parked his car. "And she's funny, smart, completely authentic, and came purposely ugly to scare me away because she thought I'd be terrible like all the other dates her mother arranged." The explanation came with a laugh, remembering her confession. "And you completely loved it? Admit it," Luck accused correctly. "I loved it. It was the most refreshing thing that's ever happened on any date I've ever had," Jordan confirmed, stopping beside the car, but not getting in yet. "Luck, she doesn't know who I am. Like, really doesn't know. She has no idea I'm a CEO or that I have money. She just thinks I work in tech and pay my bills." The silence on the other end of the line lasted only a few seconds before Luck responded with obvious shock. "Seriously? She didn't research you beforehand? In the age of Google, she didn't look up your name?" The incredulity was palpable. "Apparently not. She was so focused on sabotaging the date she didn't even bother to investigate who I was," Jordan explained, smiling, remembering the entire absurd situation. "That's really rare, man. The last time someone didn't know who you were before going out with you was in college before the company took off," Luck observed seriously. "Exactly. And it's so good. Luck, she likes me for me. Not for the bank account or the company or the status. Just for me," Jordan admitted with a vulnerability he rarely showed. "She laughed at my jokes, talked about art with genuine passion, and agreed to go out with me again, even after I ruined all her sabotage plans. But you're going to tell her eventually, right? About the company and everything?" Luck asked with evident concern. "Eventually, yes, but not now. Right now, I just want to be Jordan, the guy who works in tech and who made her laugh on a date that was supposed to be disastrous," he responded, sighing. "When she finds out, it'll be interesting either way." Luck laughed on the other end, agreeing. "Good luck with that, buddy, and just for the record, I completely approve of her. Anyone who makes you smile like that deserves a chance." I think our protagonist, Aisha, is going to discover Jordan's secret life very soon. Chapter 4. Second date, and still sabotaging, slightly.
He says he's hiding something, and I don't know if I'm ready for what that truth might change.
The entire week dragged with torturous slowness that normally only happened during the last hours before vacations planned months ago, each day seeming to last approximately 48 hours instead of the regular 24. I caught myself looking at the clock at the museum with embarrassing frequency, checking how many hours were still left until Friday at 7 p.m., when Jordan would pick me up for our official second date. Mr. Whiskers had become my involuntary confidant throughout the week, listening patiently while I alternated between irrational excitement and absolute panic about what to wear and how to act. "Yeah, okay, Whiskers. This time I need to go normal. Like genuinely normal and not purposely horrible." I spoke out loud to my cat on Friday at 5 p.m. while staring at my open closet, as if it were an impossible puzzle to solve. But I also can't go too dressed up because it'll seem like I'm trying too hard. It needs to be casual but pretty, relaxed but with effort. You understand? Mr. Whiskers meowed back with that typical cat indifference that clearly didn't understand or care about female fashion dilemmas. After trying on approximately 15 different combinations that transformed my room into something resembling a department store after clearance-y, I finally decided on dark jeans that fit me perfectly and a light-colored blouse that was pretty without being excessive. Unperfect. This says, "I made a reasonable effort, but I'm not desperate." Exactly the message I need to convey. I commented to the mirror while trying on the combination for the third time just to be sure. I brushed my hair until it was smooth and shiny, applied light makeup that enhanced without completely transforming, and chose comfortable shoes that wouldn't make me stumble if I got nervous. Why am I so nervous? It's just a second date with the guy who already saw me literally at my worst possible appearance. There shouldn't be any pressure at all, I muttered to myself, while applying a final touch of lip gloss. Mr. Whiskers jumped onto the nightstand beside me and stared at me with those judging green eyes that seemed to say, "You're obviously nervous because you like him more than you want to admit." "You're right, and I hate when you're right," I said to the cat, who simply started licking his paw with total indifference to my existential crisis. The intercom buzzed at exactly 7 o'clock, showing that Jordan was the type of punctual person who took scheduled time seriously, and my heart gave that strange leap that had become familiar whenever I thought about him during the week. "Hi, it's Jordan. I'm down here." His voice came through the intercom, making my stomach knot with nervousness, mixed with excitement. "I'll be right down in a minute," I responded, trying to sound calm and relaxed, despite being internally in total panic. I took one last look in the mirror, took 3 deep breaths to calm my nerves, and said goodbye to Mr. Whiskers, who clearly didn't care about my departure. "Ciao, wish me luck, you ungrateful furball," I said to the cat, who simply yawned, showing all his teeth in response. I went down the building stairs instead of taking the elevator, because I needed the extra minutes to compose myself and make sure I wouldn't look like a completely out-of-control person when I saw him. Jordan was casually leaning against the car in front of my building, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows in a way that should be illegal for being so attractive. The smile that lit up his face when he saw me come out of the building was so genuine and happy, it made all the nervousness evaporate instantly, replaced by a warm and comfortable feeling in my chest. "Wow, you look absolutely beautiful," he said, moving away from the car to greet me properly, and the way his green eyes scanned my appearance made my face heat up immediately. "Thanks. You look great too," I responded, trying not to seem as affected as I really was by his presence. "No stained sweatshirt today? I'm almost disappointed," he joked, while opening the passenger door for me with that gentlemanly kindness that was becoming characteristic of him. "I saved the sweatshirt for special occasions like future sabotages or intensive house cleaning," I countered, getting into the car, which was surprisingly normal considering everything else about him. I noticed the car was a nice sedan, but not extravagant. Nothing that screamed excessive wealth or attempt to impress through material goods. "I expected something flashier considering how well you dress," I commented when he got in on the driver's side and started the engine. "Flashy cars attract unnecessary attention, and I prefer to keep things simple when possible," he explained, with a casual shrug while pulling out of the spot and starting to drive. The restaurant he chose was perfect, in a way that showed he had paid attention during our first conversation. It was a casual but clearly quality place, not too formal to the point of being intimidating, but nice enough to show he had cared about choosing well. "This place specializes in homemade Italian food, and I thought you'd appreciate it considering you mentioned liking traditional cuisine the other day," he explained while parking, and the fact he had remembered a small detail mentioned casually made me smile involuntarily. We sat at a table near the window that overlooked a charming street lit by fairy lights hung in the trees, creating an atmosphere that was romantic without being excessive. The conversation flowed naturally from the moment we sat down, without those strange and uncomfortable silences that normally marked first or second dates. "Tell me more about this restoration work you love so much. What was the most challenging project you've ever faced?" he asked after we ordered drinks, leaning slightly forward with genuine interest shining in his eyes. "The most difficult project was definitely a Dutch portrait from 1650 that had been severely damaged by fire decades ago," I began explaining, feeling the familiar excitement that always came when I talked about my work. Approximately 40% of the painting was completely destroyed. The paint had melted in some areas and completely peeled in others, and experts said it would be impossible to restore to its original state. I gestured as I spoke, my hands moving in the air to illustrate the extent of the damage. Jordan listened attentively without interrupting, his focus completely on me in a way that was simultaneously flattering and slightly intimidating. It took 6 months of meticulous work, researching original 17th century techniques, analyzing pigments through a microscope to reproduce exact colors, literally reconstructing layer by layer until it was finally perfect. I continued feeling the pride from that specific project warm my chest. When I finished and we put the painting back on display, it looked exactly as the original artist had intended. It was absolutely magical to see something so destroyed come back to life. "You literally love what you do. You can tell by the way your eyes sparkle and how you gesture animatedly when you explain the details," he observed with a soft smile that made my stomach leap. "It's more than work for you. It's purpose, passion, something that completes you in a way that goes beyond simply paying bills." The observation was so accurate and showed so much attention to detail that I was momentarily speechless. Yes, exactly that. It's purpose and not just profession. I agreed, emotional that someone understood so clearly, something many people thought was just regular work. And you? Tell me more about this tech work you do. How did you get into this field? I asked, turning the conversation to him because I noticed he always directed attention to me and rarely talked about himself. I noticed a very brief hesitation before he answered. So quick I almost didn't register it. No, I work with technology and business management, software development, and that kind of thing. It's interesting, but definitely not as fascinating as bringing historical art back to life. He responded vaguely in a way that technically wasn't a lie, but clearly omitted important details. It's the kind of work that pays the bills well and keeps me busy, but it's not something that makes me wake up excited every morning like your work obviously does with you. His modesty was surprising considering how confident he was about everything else. Modesty is a rare quality in successful men, I observed, taking a sip of my drink. Most guys I met on previous dates couldn't stop bragging about achievements and salaries, but you barely mention your work and deflect the subject whenever I ask. The observation made him smile in a kind of guilty way that sparked my curiosity even more. Maybe I just prefer to focus on more interesting things like you and your stories about vengeful 19th century artists. He countered softly, deflecting again. Dinner was delicious, and the conversation continued flowing easily between us. Frequent laughter punctuating discussions about varied topics ranging from art to favorite movies and opinions about controversial foods like pineapple on pizza. When dessert arrived, a shared tiramisu he had insisted on ordering, I decided to test our compatibility more directly because part of me was still looking for reasons to protect myself from liking him too much too fast. Can I ask you some kind of random questions about life compatibility? I asked, taking a spoonful of tiramisu. Sure, ask whatever you want, he agreed with evident curiosity. Do you want kids? Like lots of kids? Like 10 children running around the house? I started testing with the most obvious question. 10? Definitely not. Maybe 2 or 3 eventually when the time is right. Depends on who I'm with and what we both want together, he responded thoughtfully. And you? Same thing. 2 or 3 sounds perfect to me, I admitted, slightly frustrated that our answers were so compatible. Okay, next question. Do you snore loud enough to wake the neighbors? I asked, trying to find some incompatibility. Not that I know of. And you? He countered, smiling as if he knew exactly what I was doing. Me neither, I responded, sighing. Are you excessively organized to the point of having an attack if someone moves something 1 centimeter from its original position? I'm organized, but not obsessively. I can handle a little controlled chaos, he responded clearly, enjoying the interrogation. Do you leave dirty dishes in the sink for days? He asked back. Never. I always wash everything the same day, I responded honestly. Damn, another compatibility, I muttered, without thinking out loud, making him laugh openly. Why are you so determined to find incompatibilities between us? He questioned, leaning forward with that amused smile. Because you're literally too perfect. Handsome, funny, kind, thoughtful, modest, punctual, and now I find out you also don't snore and want the same number of kids as me, I explained, gesturing dramatically with the dessert spoon. There has to be some horrible flaw hidden somewhere because perfect people don't exist. The frustrated declaration made him laugh even louder, attracting curious looks from nearby tables. I have flaws, Aisha. Several of them, actually, he guaranteed when he managed to stop laughing. I'm a workaholic to the point of being harmful sometimes. I have controlling tendencies that I need to consciously suppress. My sarcasm can be excessive and hurt feelings unintentionally, and he paused, weighing his words carefully. I'm hiding something important from you that will eventually be revealed, and you might be mad at me for it. The sudden and serious admission caught me completely off guard. You're hiding something from me. What? I asked, feeling curiosity and a twinge of concern. It's not the right time to reveal yet, but I promise I'll tell you everything when it's appropriate, he responded, maintaining intense eye contact. It's nothing illegal or immoral, or that will hurt you. It's just information about me that I omitted for reasons that will make sense when you know everything. That's mysterious and slightly concerning, I observed, frowning. Do you trust me enough to wait until I'm ready to share? He asked, extending his hand across the table toward mine. I looked at his hand, and then at his green eyes, that seemed genuinely vulnerable for the first time since we met. Yes, I trust you, even though it's strange to trust so quickly someone I met a week ago, I admitted, placing my hand in his fingers intertwined with mine in a way that felt natural and right, the warmth of his palm against mine sending that familiar electric current up my arm. Thank you for trusting. I promise I won't betray that trust, he said softly, squeezing my hand gently. And for the record, I also trust you in a surprisingly quick way. You make me want to be completely honest about everything, even when it's scary. Good. Because honesty and trust are important foundations for any relationship to work. I spoke without thinking, and then froze, realizing I had used the word relationship casually. I completely agree, he said with a satisfied smile that showed he had noticed my verbal slip, but chose not to make a big deal about it. Now finish this tiramisu with me before I eat it all by myself and go into a sugar coma. Chapter 5. Discovering the Millionaire.
He wanted me to know the man before the money. But can I handle loving both?
The week following our second date passed in a happy fog of constant text messages and nightly phone calls that stretched into the early morning hours. Conversations about absolutely everything, ranging from deep topics about life dreams to ridiculous debates about what would be the best superpower to have. Jordan had become a constant presence in my thoughts in a way that was simultaneously exciting and slightly scary, because I had never allowed myself to like someone so much so quickly before. Mr. Whiskers was starting to openly judge me every time I laughed at my phone during our conversations, his green eyes narrowing with feline disapproval. It was a perfectly normal Tuesday at the museum when my world turned completely upside down in a way I could never have anticipated. I was focused on analyzing a Renaissance painting under ultraviolet light looking for previous restorations when Marina, my colleague and closest friend in the department, practically exploded through the lab door with an excitement that immediately made me drop everything I was doing. Aisha, you absolutely need to see this now. It's incredible. It's wonderful. It's the best day of our professional career, she shouted, practically jumping with joy. Marina, what happened? Did someone donate a lost masterpiece? Did we discover a forgotten Caravaggio in the basement? I asked, confused by her extreme euphoria while taking off my protective gloves and turning to face her completely. Better. Jordan Rue, the Jordan Rue, just donated $2 million to the museum specifically for the restoration wing, for our department. She announced dramatically, gesturing wildly with her hands as if conducting an invisible orchestra. The name echoed in my head for a few seconds before my brain actually fully processed the information. And when it did, my heart literally stopped beating for a full moment. Jordan Rue, I repeated slowly, feeling the blood drain from my face as the room started spinning slightly around me. Yes, Jordan Rue, CEO of Rue Tech, one of the youngest and most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country. Self-made billionaire who built an empire from scratch. He's absolutely incredible and just saved our department. Marina continued talking rapidly without noticing my growing existential crisis. Wait, stop for a second. I managed to stutter, raising my hand to interrupt her. You said CEO? Billionaire? Jordan Rue is a billionaire CEO of Rue Tech? Each word came out with increasing difficulty as the reality of the situation started seeping into my shocked consciousness. Yes, how do you not know this? He's super famous in the business world, Marina exclaimed, looking at me as if I had just said I didn't know who the president of the country was. I know him. The words came out of my mouth before I could think better about the implications of admitting this out loud. What do you mean you know Jordan Rue? You personally know a famous billionaire and never casually mentioned this in our daily conversations. Marina practically screamed, grabbing my shoulders and shaking me slightly, as if that would make the explanations come out faster. I went out with him, twice actually. But he never mentioned he was a billionaire company CEO. He just said he worked in tech. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Marina's heavy breathing as she stared at me with eyes wide with absolute shock. You went out with Jordan Rue, the hot billionaire Jordan Rue who appears on business magazine covers, and you didn't know who he was? She asked incredulously, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe my ignorance. I don't usually research people before going out with them. I just accept what they tell me about themselves. I defended myself, feeling a confused mixture of anger, confusion, and something that could be betrayal growing in my chest. And so he lied then. Let you think he was just a normal guy who worked in tech when in reality, he owns a company valued in billions, Marina observed with eyes still wide with shock. Technically, it's not a complete lie. He really does work in tech. He just omitted the part where he owns everything, I argued weakly, trying to process the magnitude of his omission. Nah, but he let me believe he was someone ordinary, that he made a normal salary, that he was just Jordan the nice guy, and not Jordan the famous billionaire entrepreneur. Are you mad at him? Marina asked, observing my expression carefully. I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm shocked, confused, kind of betrayed because he omitted something so big. But I also understand why he would do this, considering how many people must be interested in him only for the money, I explained, running my hands through my hair, frustrated with the whole situation. He's coming here this afternoon. He'll actually be here in a few hours to personally see the restoration projects his donation will fund, Marina informed with a worried expression. The panic that took over me was instant and overwhelming. He's coming here, today, now, I asked, feeling my heart race dangerously. In approximately 3 hours, the museum director is organizing a special presentation of our most important projects, she confirmed. Then I'm going to confront him. I'm going to look directly at billionaire Jordan Rue and ask why the hell he thought it appropriate to omit the fact that he could probably buy my entire apartment with the money he probably spends on coffee monthly, I declared with determination that sounded more confident than I actually felt. The next 3 hours passed simultaneously fast and too slow, while I alternated between mentally rehearsing what I would say to him and panicking about the absurd situation. When I finally heard voices approaching the main lab where we were setting up the presentation for him, my heart started beating so hard I was sure everyone in the room could hear. And then he appeared, Jordan Rue in all his business glory, wearing a suit I now realized was probably extremely expensive and custom-made, hair perfectly arranged, confident posture of someone used to commanding rooms full of executives. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw the exact moment he realized I knew the truth, his expression changing from polished professional to something resembling guilt mixed with apprehension. The museum director was talking animatedly about the projects we could accomplish with the generous donation, showing paintings that needed urgent restoration, but I could barely pay attention because I was completely focused on Jordan, who kept looking at me with that expression that confirmed everything Marina had told me. The presentation seemed to last an eternity before it finally ended, and the director began accompanying Jordan on a tour of the museum, probably trying to impress him even more to guarantee future donations. I waited in one of the empty restoration rooms knowing he would eventually come looking for me because I had seen the recognition in his eyes when our gazes crossed. It didn't take long before the door opened and Jordan entered, carefully closing it behind him, his expression cautiously neutral. "Aisha, can we talk about this?" he asked, keeping a respectful distance as if he knew I needed physical space to process everything. "Private room, now, where no one can hear us?" I responded with a firm voice, pointing to the smaller workroom that was attached to the main lab. He nodded and followed me in silence while I walked determinedly to the private space where we could finally have this inevitable conversation without a curious audience. I closed the door behind us and turned to face him, directly crossing my arms over my chest in a defensive posture. "You're a billionaire," I declared, without making it a question, because there were no longer any doubts about the truth. "Yes, I am," he confirmed simply, maintaining eye contact without trying to dodge or make immediate excuses. "And you didn't mention this at any point during our 2 dates and all our phone conversations," I continued, feeling frustration grow in my voice. "I didn't mention it, and I'm sorry for omitting something so important," he admitted with honesty that was simultaneously frustrating and appreciated. "But Aisha, you need to understand. Do you have any idea how many women are interested in me exclusively for the money? How many pretend to like me but really just want access to the credit card and lifestyle?" The question came with genuine vulnerability I didn't expect to hear. "I thought you were one of them. When I agreed to this blind date arranged by my mother, I was prepared for another gold digger." "And you thought I was a gold digger?" I asked incredulously, pointing to myself. "At first, yes, but then you showed up in a stained sweatshirt purposely trying to scare me away. You didn't care about impressing or looking perfect. You were literally trying to make me hate you," he explained, taking a step toward me. "And it was so refreshing, so real and authentic that I immediately realized you had no idea who I was and didn't care about money or status. You just wanted me to leave so your mother would stop arranging dates. So you decided to keep lying by omission because it was convenient," I accused, feeling tears of frustration start to sting my eyes. "It wasn't a lie, Aisha. I really do work in tech. I just omitted the scale of the work because I wanted you to know me as Jordan the person and not as Jordan the billionaire CEO." He argued with logic that technically made sense, but still hurt. "I wanted to be seen for who I really am, not for what I have or how much I make." "I understand that, Jordan. I genuinely understand the logic behind your decision," I admitted, taking a deep breath to control my emotions. "Yum, but you should have told me before donating $2 million to my work department. Now it seems like you're trying to buy my affection or impress through grand financial gestures." The accusation made him recoil slightly, as if he had taken a physical slap. "It's not that, absolutely not that," he protested vehemently, shaking his head. "I donated because the museum genuinely needs it, because art preservation is important, and because after hearing you talk so passionately about your work, I wanted to support something you love," he explained with sincerity, evident in every word. And it wasn't to buy you or impress you. It was to show that I see you, that I pay attention to what matters to you, that I want to support your passions even if it's through means I have available. The explanation was so sweet and genuine that tears finally started streaming down my face without permission. That's really sweet, but also kind of manipulative and definitely confusing, I managed to say through the tears that now fell freely. And damn it, Jordan, I like you. I like you a lot in a scary way considering we've only known each other for 2 weeks. And now I find out you're a famous billionaire who appears on magazine covers while I'm just an art restorer with a cat and stained sweatshirt. The confession came with sobs I could no longer control. Jordan closed the distance between us in 2 long steps and gently held my shoulders, making me look directly at his green eyes full of emotion. And I'm a workaholic CEO who ran away from his own mother down the fire escape, who accepted an arranged date just so she'd stop showing up at my office, and who found you, an incredible woman who made me laugh more in one night than I laughed in entire months, he said softly, using one of his thumbs to wipe tears from my face. Money doesn't change who I am fundamentally, Aisha, just like it doesn't change who you are. It only changes logistics and external circumstances, but doesn't change us. Us, I repeated the word weakly, my heart jumping despite the tears. Yes, us. If you want there to be an us after all this, he confirmed with cautious hope shining in his eyes. I know I omitted important information, and I'm sorry about that, but please believe it was because I wanted you to know me as a person before knowing about the money, and now you know everything, and I can still prove to you I'm the same person who ate a garlic sandwich with you and copied your bad table manners just to make you laugh. No more secrets? I asked, wiping the remaining tears with the back of my hand. No more secrets. Complete promise of total transparency from here on, he promised solemnly, making a cross sign over his heart. And Aisha, you can still come in a stained sweatshirt on our dates if you want. Money definitely doesn't change that. The ridiculous comment made me laugh through the remaining tears. A wet and pathetic sound, but genuinely amused. You're impossible, and a billionaire idiot who should have told me sooner, I said without real anger in my voice now. I know, and I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? He asked with that puppy dog expression that probably always worked. Eventually, I'll forgive you. But first, you need to take me on a very, very good date to make up for all this confusion, I declared, crossing my arms again but smiling slightly now. Where do you want to go? Name any expensive restaurant, any sophisticated place. I'll make a reservation immediately, he offered, pulling his phone from his pocket. No, none of that. I want a simple place, a casual pizzeria where we can just talk and be ourselves without formalities or expectations, I insisted firmly. Nothing fancy, nothing extravagant, just the two of us really talking about everything. The expression that took over his face was one of complete melting, as if I had just said something profoundly romantic. Perfect. Casual pizza tonight at 7. I'll pick you up here, he suggested with a huge smile. Perfect. But I'm paying half the bill, I declared, anticipating the argument I knew would come. Aisha, I'm literally a billion, he started, but I raised my hand interrupting. And I have my own pride and dignity, so we'll split it 50-50, or I'm not going, I insisted stubbornly. He looked at me for a long moment before starting to laugh, shaking his head in surrender. Okay, half each. You're too stubborn for your own good, he finally agreed. And you're a controlling workaholic who just admitted it. So we're tied again, I countered, smiling genuinely now. He took one step closer, eliminating almost all the distance between us, and gently kissed my forehead in a gesture so sweet and intimate it made my heart completely melt. Until 7 today then, Aisha in stained sweatshirt who completely stole my billionaire heart, he murmured against my forehead before pulling away. Until 7, billionaire Jordan who was finally honest, I responded, feeling butterflies in my stomach. And Jordan, come dress normal, no $5,000 suits for casual pizzeria, I added, pointing to the clearly very expensive suit he was wearing. How do you know this suit costs $5,000? He asked, surprised, raising his eyebrows. Because now I know you're a billionaire, so obviously I researched you and found out you wear Armani exclusively, I admitted with a shrug. Stalker, he accused with an amused smile. Informed, it's completely different from stalker, I corrected, crossing my arms again. Touché, you won that one, he agreed, laughing while walking toward the door. Before leaving, he turned one more time with that devastating smile that I now knew belonged to one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. And Aisha, I'm really happy you found out the truth. Now I can be completely myself without omissions. And with that, he left, leaving me alone in the lab with a silly smile on my face and Mr. Whiskers waiting at home to hear all about the most absurd day of my life. my reflections on this video. Aisha showed up in my head wearing that ridiculous sweatshirt, and I simply knew I had gold in my hands. The idea of a woman sabotaging her own date in such a spectacularly disastrous way, and the guy finding it hilarious instead of running away, made me laugh alone in the cafe where I usually write. The barista looked at me weird. Totally worth it. The real challenge. Making Jordan interesting without falling into the mysterious bad boy trap. I wanted someone confident, but not arrogant. Rich, but not snobby. So I created a guy who literally runs away from his own mother down the fire escape, and finds it funny when someone shows up looking like a troll on a date. This is the romance I wanted to read, where the hero has a sense of humor. Writing Aisha's self-sabotage scenes was way too therapeutic. How many times have I been on terrible dates? The accountant with the spreadsheet is based on a true story, I swear. The action figures too. Life imitates art that imitates my disastrous love life. The billionaire twist almost didn't happen. Originally, Jordan was just going to be successful, but I realized Aisha deserved a plot twist worthy of her chaotic personality. And nothing screams romantic complication, like finding out the nice guy is actually absurdly rich. Mr. Whiskers stole scenes without saying a word. Typical of cats. And if you want to watch more fun stories, click on the video that appears now on your screen.